Awesome. Well, I'm Boyd. I'm an addict. And hey, family. And Joe, thank you so much. I got to tell everybody that's on the Zoom call that I don't know. Joe got in touch with me a couple of months ago, at least, maybe about two and a half. And he said, "Would you be willing to speak on April the 15th?" And I knew it was like, well, that'll be my anniversary. Of course, I'll be glad to speak. And so a little, I don't know, it was just really a couple of weeks ago, I think Joe texted me and said, April 15th, that is the day, isn't it? And I said, did you realize it was the day? And he says, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. So, I mean, so you get to see, somebody who's just gushing with like, gratitude today because here you go. This is the sign right here. I love NA. And believe me, this really and truly is like I should be wearing it on the top of my head because I've had a chance to really and truly do a little bit of walking down memory lane today, and I knew I was going to be talking tonight, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to talk about. Amy told me earlier. She says, well, just get out of the way and let God do the talking. And and the funny thing is, Amy can do that. She gives, she stands up in front of conventions and gives wonderful talks and does it by, that way. And I've just never really been able to do it that way. I've got to have a little bit of structure. And what's really interesting right now, guys, is that I know a lot of you, a whole lot of faces on this Zoom call tonight. And I know you from the NA history stuff that Chris and I do. And so, I'm used to speaking to you guys with a script, all right? This prepared speech and, Chris clicking the slides. And so now it's not that way. So this is even kind of more exciting to me. And I guess, I tell you a little bit about myself. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I was born in North Carolina in Greensboro, about an hour away. Or hour and a half away. So I've lived in North Carolina all my life. I still have a sponsor. We talk every Monday night. I have a 9 o'clock with Gary every Monday night. I mean, my sponsor is very structured, and I'm going to tell you something. It has occurred to me at times that if I had to contribute anything to my growth in recovery or just as a person, for me, it was that consistency that my sponsor has given me by meeting with me face to face, or now it's on a phone call once a week. I mean, it really is. I mean, Gary has been my sponsor for 30 years now. And I got him when I was, when I had 4 years clean. And after a period of time, I realized that consistency right there contributed to a lot of me being able to mature as an individual. And so anyway, Joe told me that I've got like 40 minutes to share my experience, strength, and hope, and then pick a topic, and we were going to open it up to that. So what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about myself and share a little bit of where I come from and how I got here and what it was like. And then I'm going to try to do that for about 20 minutes. And then I'm going to try to do something that I haven't done before in a talk and talk to you guys about my experience researching NA history, because that really was a pivot point in my recovery. But to begin with, I was born in Greensboro, North Carolina. My parents, my dad, I don't think he ever finished high school. Actually, he worked for the post office. My mother, she actually, after she had me as a child, she finished her college degree and then went on to get her master's, and she got it in like early childhood education. And much later in life, she told me the reason that she did that was because she had this kid there, me, and it just scared the shit out of her. So she had to go, figure out what to do. So anyway, I grew up in Greensboro. We lived right at the UNCG campus. And so I was the only child. And so I had this I had this guy who lived across the street from me. I was told that I had met him when I was probably about 3 years old. And so one of the parts of this particular talk I want to talk about is the healing power of recovery, because I'm going to tell you a little story here, and I'm going to go through a large amount of time pretty quickly. But I grew up with this gentleman by the name of Johnny, and Johnny's the same age as me. He's actually 4 months younger than I am, and Johnny and I are really, really good buddies. Up until I started going to junior high, and then we kind of went our separate ways a little ways, and then we kind of came back and became good friends again. And there's a story I love to tell that's just the kind of the epitome of some of the things that it was like. And that is, I ran into Johnny one night when I was in my early 20s, and we were closing down a bar. And I had just done, an hallucinogen, and he did too. And he says, "Well, meet me back at the house. We'll figure out what we're going to do." So I said, "Okay." So, we go back to the house. He lives like right across the street from me. So, we get there. He hops in my car. I said, "Where do you want to go?" And so I'm driving down to the end of the street, and I get to the stop sign, and he says, "Well, I start to take a left," and he actually turns the steering wheel and says, "Let's go to the right." He says, "Let's just stay in the neighborhood." So this kind of shows you. So for the next 4 hours until the sun came up, all I did was go around the block for 4 hours. And Johnny and I were laughing so hard, because we were getting off on the acid, that's all we were doing. And I think about this every now and then, because what if one of my neighbors had just looked out, the street and saw me going around the block, So actually, Johnny texted me the other day about something about let's just keep it in the neighborhood. So Johnny's this really, really close friend of the family. And as I got into my addiction, heavily into my addiction, I ended up stealing a bunch of money from my dad. Imagine that. I know that's a shocker. And Johnny didn't actually, my dad was kind of a surrogate dad to Johnny. Johnny's father had taken off. So Johnny really thought a lot of my father, and he didn't think too kindly of me taking a bunch of money from dad. So Johnny came down, he made it his point to find me one night, and he hit me once, guys, and it broke my jaw. All right, literally broke my jaw, and so that caused me another transition in my life. I ended up going down to Raleigh to live with my mom and my stepdad. And, Johnny and I, we didn't see each other or speak or anything like that. And then it was a while after that particular time that I got into recovery. I mean, it was probably 6 or 7 years. That was kind of like one of the lows right there, one of the bottoms that I hit. And then 6 or 7 years, I started going to meetings and coming into recovery. And now the healing part of recovery comes like this. I really didn't see Johnny, didn't know what Johnny was up to. I take that back. I was invited to one of his weddings, probably his first marriage, something like that. I came down from Raleigh real quickly, left. And, we really didn't talk about it too much or anything like that. And so fast forward 10 years, I'm getting ready to pick up a 10-year medallion, and I called Dad and asked him to please come down to Raleigh. I'd love to see him. And so Dad showed up with Johnny and brought Johnny with him, and it was just a really, really, really cool time, because Johnny told me, and this is what's the gift, folks, is that Johnny actually was a year sober. He had started going to AA. And so he got to see me pick up a 10-year medallion. And where that story leads to is 10 years later, I'm in Greensboro taking care of my dad, who's he's in his last 6 months of life. And I pick up the phone and I call Johnny and I say, look, dude, I'm here with Dad right now, and would you do me a favor and take me to a meeting? And he came and picked me up, and believe me, during that whole 6 months that I was up there, Johnny never left my side. And I mean, see, folks, that's just the healing power of recovery right there. I mean, it really is. Johnny and I got to rebond and reconnect, and we talked about that time, and that's the healing power of recovery. That's the good stuff, is that right there. Another story I like to tell about the healing power of recovery is, my dad actually, he used to let me drive his cars when I was 16 and 17. And then one day, during my addiction, I backed into one of his cars, and he didn't really care for that too much. So I got kind of delegated down to the El Camino, like the pickup truck. And I was given that. And then even as I got into my addiction even more, Dad said, no, you can't drive my cars. And even to the point of where I'd asked to, can I take it to the store? And he'd be like, no, Boyd, I don't think so. And so anyway, when I left Greensboro after I got my jaw broken, I really didn't speak with my dad for a long time. And I went and moved down to Raleigh. And then, I got clean 6 or 7 years later. And it really was a couple of years into recovery before my dad and I started to reconnect and to start very slowly of healing that very ruptured relationship that we had. And but I'll never forget the day that Dad called me and he said, Boyd, I'd like for you to come up to Greensboro and go with me to this parade. Because see, my father had a bunch of antique cars, and he said, I'd like for you to drive the Pontiac in the parade. And to me, that was just another inclination and just another thing about the healing power of recovery. And, I know that I'm speaking to a lot of people out of here that have got a lot of time, and they've got their own stories of how, of how this happens. So to the gentleman who's got like 10 days that we heard, this is truly a life-changing program. I mean, I can't explain it to you. It really is. For me, it's just the gifts have been way too numerous. And I will tell you that in the beginning, when I got here, I knew there was a particular substance that was kicking my ass. Okay. I did not know if I wanted what you folks had, but what I knew, this is what was crystal clear to me. What I was doing was not working. And that opened up this very closed mind just enough to say, why don't I try what these folks are doing, and I'll see how it goes. And I tell you something, the first year and a half that I was here, I relapsed 3 times. And 2 of the times were with old friends. And then one of the times was I just came up against the wall of fear that the only way I knew to get out of was to use. And believe me, after that 3rd time, it was kind of like, well, Boyd, I think it's time to do some serious changing here. And I really and truly, I had to make a decision about these 2 friends, because they were 2 guy friends, and they were more than just using buddies. Okay, they really were. And to be honest with you, it was crystal clear to me about what the dope was doing to me, but it wasn't as crystal clear about the friendships. And so I had to make a decision, and this is one of the hard decisions that I made, was that for a period of time, I really couldn't be around these folks. And it was awkward. That's just all there was to it. But my recovery meant more to me at that particular time. And there was one of them that I would actually talk to on the phone. And on occasion, we'd meet for lunch, like during the daylight and all that sort of stuff. But, I wouldn't dare go out with them at night or anything like that. And, both of them, the long and short of that particular story is that after about 3 years, I had 3 years clean. I started reconnecting with them, and both of them have since passed along, but we remained friends for a long time. So that's some of the really gifts of the program too. Um, I truly do. I'm one of those guys that definitely feels like I grew up in NA. I do know that when I got here, I couldn't even look myself in the mirror, and having to start work the steps. The one thing that I did not expect that the steps gave me was the ability to have peace, okay, and to be able to actually like the work, which is, gosh. I'm gonna fast forward here because I'm like 20, got like 24 minutes, and I'm gonna try to do something a little bit different right now. Um, I'm gonna talk about a journey that I started about 13 years ago with the person who I've never told him this face to face, and it's on a Zoom call, but I'll guarantee you he ranks among the 5 most important men in my life. Um, and I met a guy named Chris B. And I went to the San Antonio, Amy and I went to the San Antonio World Convention. And I had kind of had my spark lit about history. I got a friend by the name of Brent C., who spoke one time in Greenville, South Carolina, and he actually talked a little bit about some of the history of NA. And he's what actually kind of wet my whistle there a little bit. And I actually went out and bought, Miracles Happen book and read it. And Brent and I had some history discussions. But at the World Service Conference, the convention in San Antonio, they had this bookcase set up. And I'd never seen any of I didn't even know about the red first edition or the blue first edition or any of that stuff. And there they were in this case, this wonderful case. And I was thinking, oh God, these things must go for, astronomical amounts of money. And some guy from California, I mean, I know who he is. His name's Matt. And he showed up with, I didn't know him at the time, I know him now. And he showed up and he was telling this young lady, he says, you can buy these on eBay for XXX amount of dollars. And I'm like, not really? So I come back to Raleigh and boy, it's on. I'm in eBay right now. So actually, a sponsee of mine named Walter, he says, I've got a guy that I want to introduce you to. His name is Chris. And I said, okay. So Chris and I met at this place called New World Cafe on Wednesdays before he was going to go meet his home group. And we started out, Chris was actually further along in the history journey than I was. I was really just starting out. So Chris had gave me like Jimmy K's 20th anniversary talk. And he says, why don't you listen to it and we'll talk about it next week. And I said, okay, that sounds fine. I'll be glad to do that. And we did that. And then, I can't remember really. I do remember that one of the first projects that we got on looking for was a book, looking for a book called My Years with Narcotics Anonymous by Bob Stone, because Chris had a copy, but he would not loan me the copy at all. He says, no, dude. He says, he says, he had bought this one from Bob Barrett and tried to get another copy and he couldn't get it. And he says, no, I can't do it. So our first mission was to actually find this. And I ended up, we really did. We looked around a lot. Actually, it was Amy who introduced me to D. Hughes in Greenville, and it was D who introduced me to the person I bought it from. But in that length of time, we actually, Craig R. loaned me his copy. And so I actually have a pristine copy that's never even been broken because I read Craig's. And so Chris and I would go through that. And we ended up going, there were there was not a lot of people doing NA history talks that I know of anyway on the East Coast at the time. We did know that Kermit did it, and we found out Kermit was going to be in North Carolina. So Wes down there and Dan and Chris and I took off and went up to see Kermit. And I had known Kermit. I had connected with Kermit somehow or another beforehand. But anyway, we got to listen to Kermit's talk and to see all of Kermit's collection. And I had this old comic book collection that I'd been carrying around for years and years. And Kermit, is a comic book dealer. And so I said, well, why don't we get together? And he said, yeah, come on up to my house and we'll do that. So Chris and I went up there and I took my comic book collection. And so we just started, it was like, we traded is what we did. We traded comic books for NA, memorabilia. And Chris was over there scanning away and working on scanning. He was really upset with himself because the scanner wasn't working and he had to download a driver and all this sort of stuff. And that was kind of, oh yeah. And then, so like about 2 o'clock in the morning, Kermit he takes off and he goes somewhere. And he comes back and he has these 2 banker boxes. Turns out it was 3 banker boxes. And he turns out and he says, this is the holy grail right here, folks. And I'm like, should I stop what I'm doing, Kermit? And he said, yeah. He said, you should. He said, these are Joseph P.'s archives. And Joseph was the treasurer of the World Lit Committee when the basic text was being written. And these were the files, the raw files that Kermit had gotten from Joe. So we looked through them and stuff like that. Well, we invited Kermit down to Raleigh to actually do a history presentation. And Chris says, why don't you call him and find out if he will bring down Joseph P.'s files and we'll scan them that weekend, Boyd. And I said, yeah, sure. So I did, and Kermit brought them down. And Amy and Chris and I were in Chris's office, almost all weekend scanning Kermit's files. And this was when we just had a flatbed scanner, and that was it. And man, we didn't hardly put a dent in it. And so we, humbly looked at Kermit and said, look, Kermit, can we, keep these and scan them? And Kermit just looked at us and he says, yeah, you can, but you're dealing with my wife right here, guys. Don't mess it up, So we learned, it took us probably, I'm gonna ballpark it at about 3 months to get through with that project. But we really and truly, I think we put these things in loose leaf binders. We organized them. We had a table of contents. I mean, we gave it back to Kermit in a very, very fine manner. But I tell you, this really wet the whistle of Chris and I about, NA archives and finding out, because I personally did not know how that basic text was written at all. And this actually started us to learn. And at that time, there wasn't any websites, history websites that were on the internet. There had been one called, NA Archive, but it had been down, and those were Greg P's old, a lot of Greg P's old archives had been up, but it was not functioning anymore. And so anyway, this really and truly lit the spark right there of finding out more, because one of the things that just gives me chills is that this was actually, Joseph P. had some of the raw data that was sent in by members that was actually culled through and cut and paste and made into what we have today. And I remember being in Chris's boardroom one time, and we had all this stuff laid out across this, what is it, a 12-foot table, 16-foot boardroom table. And we asked some of the guys from the NA meeting to come in and take a look at it. And it just, we were all just sitting around with goosebumps on our arms, because that was the beginning of the basic text. So from that particular, thing right there that we did as far as the scanning. Um, I recall actually, I recall being in Greensboro at my dad's, and as I was riding home, I got this harebrained idea, and I said, what would it'd be really cool to write a book about this. And so I go back and see Chris, and I pitch it to Chris, and I'll be honest with you guys. Chris just looked at me and rolled his eyes. It's like, oh God, there he goes again. He says, well, if that's really what you think, he says, I'll get in touch with this person that I've had an email conversation with before. His name is Bill White. And I, Chris had showed me the book that Bill wrote, Slaying the Dragon. So I knew of Bill. And believe me, the relationship that started out with Bill wanted to know, what archives we have. And I may be getting a little bit forward here, because I'm not sure if Bill came on board after we got those archives or not. But anyway, by doing what we did, digitizing Kermit's archives, I had invited Bo up to speak at my home group's 25th anniversary, because I knew I had found out that he had been the chairperson for, I think it was 5 of the world lit conferences, but he was really the spearhead that he was the spearhead that actually helped put the book together. And so when Bo came up, I asked him if Kermit, had showed him any of the stuff. He said, well, he hadn't showed it to him, but he knew about it. And so believe me, I asked him, I said, well, Bo, where are your archives at? And he says, well, they're in Atlanta. They're at my mom's garage, and he says, they're 25, 30 boxes. And I said, oh. I said, well, would you like to have your archives digitized? And he thought about it, and I mean, it was 2 or 3 minutes before he even said anything. And he finally just said, yeah, I think I would, And I'll tell you something, folks, I felt like I just hit the Holy Grail right there. I mean, I just, my head started spinning. The whole room started spinning. So a little while later on, I met Bo in Atlanta, and went over to his house, met his mom, his stepdad, and we unloaded 25 boxes from his attic and brought them back up to North Carolina and put them in my den for the better part of many years, quite frankly. And Chris was so excited that night. He plays baseball, and when we got there, because we got in here around 6 or 7 at night and brought all the boxes in, and I called Chris, and he was so excited. He came on. He didn't even change his uniform into his regular clothes. He just came over in his baseball uniform. And so we got to, sit there and go through everything. And it's really interesting, guys. Bo and I did like a rough inventory of that box, of his archives, that night. I mean, it was just, I went through the boxes. He wrote down what was in what I was telling him. Now, what's really interesting is there were some, but there were not the massive amount of world literature files that I thought we were going to find. And it really baffled Bo. He was not sure where it was, because he had actually put the files on microfiche, but where the microfiche is, we have no idea right now. But we got plenty of stuff out of there. We really did. Found some really rare photographs. Now the fast forward a little bit, the gold that's in this particular story. I mean, actually, some of the gold that we found in there is Bo had tapes of the first, second, and third World Literature Conference in his archives. So Chris and I actually got the opportunity to digitize those and listen to those. And these were tapes of when they taped the big meetings, and so it was so informative. I mean, that's one of the places that, well, 2 of the places that are really educational and that really come up is in correspondence. When you find correspondence, and when you find tapes. I mean, that stuff's just gold. And it might have been at this time after we had started digitizing those files that Chris got in touch with Bill White, because I remember sending Bill um, digital copies of this stuff. Bill wanted to kind of see what we had, and and he was actually the one that says, "Man, you guys have struck a gold mine," and I'm not sure you even realize what you found. And so anyway, we got to meet. We spent telephone calls with Bill, email correspondence. The three of us started out at the very beginning looking for this newsletter that was printed in the U.S. Public Health Hospital called The Key. And so we actually, I feel like we scorched the earth looking for copies of The Key. And what was really awesome about it is to see the resources and that Bill was able to bring to the table. And it's really interesting. I mean, I can't, so let's see. 47 is not February 47 is when Addicts Anonymous started at the U.S. Public Health Hospital. It lasted somewhere up until 1963, if I'm not mistaken. We may have maybe a little bit later. I'm a little fuzzy on these dates, guys, so please bear with me. But it started out and I can't remember if it started out as a weekly newsletter or a bi-weekly newsletter. But it ended up going into a monthly, and then a bi-monthly, and then once every quarter. But we figured out, there must have been a couple of hundred of these newsletters over a period, over more than a decade that was actually made. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we ended up finding only 27 of them. And but man, they come from some very interesting places. Their members of NA had around anywhere from 7 to 9 is what we got from members of NA. But then, we located, there was a couple of copies, if I'm not mistaken, up in Stepping Stones, which is the Bill and Lois's house. There, I know, well, I really would have to go back and refresh my memory, to be quite honest with you, on where we got them at. But that was like the first project that we did with Bill. And at some point in time, we met Bill down in South Carolina when he was doing a talk. And we got a chance to meet him face to face. And at that time, unbeknownst to Chris and I, Bill actually, he asked us if we would become involved with him in helping him expand the chapter on NA in his second edition of Slaying the Dragon. And this, personally, this was just like another one of these head spinning times. Now, I want to tell you guys something in all honesty. There's been twice in my life that I feel like I have been led, okay? I mean, where I felt like that there was a higher presence, if you will, working in my life. And that was, first of all, when I got clean. I didn't really understand what was going on, but all I knew is that my job was to show up, okay? And that was, it's like, I just know that I'm supposed to be here. It feels really uncomfortable, but I just had a sense of knowing, and I felt like I was being led. And this is the exact same thing that happened when Chris and I and Bill kind of connected, was that. And the reason I say that is because doors were opening that I just was like blown away by. It's like, this is just really not supposed to be happening. I can remember to the point of, what's my job here? My job is to, get up and show up and just do the next thing when it comes to this NA history research. All I know is it was a really exciting time. There was a couple of 2 years that were very intense times for Chris and I as far as the research goes. And thank you, Amy, for allowing me to pursue my passions, because she could tell how much the spark was lit. And it really was. This was a period of time, guys. This was 13 years ago, up till about 11 years ago, and what I fell in love with NA all over again. I mean, I really did. It was like my spark was lit, and I don't know. It just really has. It's been it truly has changed my life. Truly has changed my life. Um, I got to meet wonderful people, like go up and interview George R. up in his place in Maryland. Danny M took me up there. Danny took me on about a 10-day journey through, we went and went to Mike Rizzolo's place in Maryland, went to George R's in Pennsylvania, and we went up to New York to visit Johnny Books. And I got to see some very rare NA stuff. And I got to spend some time with George, got to spend some time with Mike, and I got to spend some time with Roy, the man who actually brought the Little White Book to the East Coast and started the first NA meeting in Pennsylvania in 1969, if I'm not mistaken. And Roy actually he allowed us to interview him, and Danny and I did it like over a couple of hours each time. So it was just I don't know, guys, just really, really exciting stuff. And I can't really, begin to tell you the type of experiences I've had, because Chris and I've been, really, really privileged to be able to go all over this country. And Chris has actually presented the presentation in Japan and in Africa, not necessarily South Africa, but Africa. And we truly have. We've been blessed to go do this presentation a lot. It started out where we had to beg people to be able to do the presentation, because here we are, two guys that are wearing ties, and what, you're doing a PowerPoint presentation? What's a PowerPoint? And so it was kind of awkward at first, but after a while, the people allowed us to do it. I will tell you one of the more interesting times was when we did the Florida Service Symposium. We've got three presentations that we do. One of them is called The Early Story. The other one's called A History of the Basic Text. And one of them is a history of the 12 traditions. And so we did this one for the second time. The first time we had done it as just a warm up at my home group. Wednesday before, we did it at Friday or Saturday at lunch down at the Service Symposium. And this is, the history of the traditions is, Jimmy K didn't write the traditions, right, guys? So this is all the things that influenced Bill to write the traditions. And so we do a 55-minute presentation that's basically all AA, wondering whether or not we're going to make it out of the Florida Service Symposium alive or not. So that one was one where it was like, is this going to work or not? But they clapped, and that's about all I know to say. But it's getting like right at 40 minutes, and so I'm truly I feel very well. I can't even. I was thinking about the year before I came into recovery, and I'm the guy who couldn't find his way out of the bathroom until the dope bag was done, period. That was it. So I really, my trajectory was like jails, institutions, or death, or the fourth one, which was to find recovery. And I'm so glad that I found recovery. My feelings about, I mean, it's like, why do I still come? It's because I found something that works. I mean, for me, this is it. I don't have to go anywhere else. I found my purpose, and I found what works. And, you know, I just want to thank Joe very much for asking me to speak tonight. But my topic that I would like to hear about from you guys is that what lights your spark in NA? What keeps you coming back? So, personally, for me, it's like, uh, all my friends are here. This is my tribe. You guys are my people. I can have a white day and y'all just understand. So that's one of the things. The other things that keep me coming back are the newcomers. It's like, where can I go to see all the miracles? And there's just no other way to describe it. All the miracles that happen in this fellowship is truly life inspiring and incredibly awesome. But anyway, Joe, thank you a lot for allowing me to speak. I appreciate it.